and welcome to MNPR Presents. Today we have Kim Simmonds. Hello, Kim. How are you? You all right?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. You've just I don't know how recently. How recently did you record your new album?
The new album ain't done yet. We did it in February of
Oh,
this
wow.
year. So, yeah, that was really timely because had we waited till March, well, we wouldn't have been able to record the album.
Yeah.
So we got in before the lockdown with the virus sort of hit, recorded it in February, had it all done in that month. And here we are now, the end of August, it gets released.
Amazing. Wow. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are just like. There's just going to be no music from for about 5 minutes. We have 5 months worth of music missing from our selection of people that would normally be releasing. It's quite bizarre, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I think that I'm sure everybody has got plans to release albums, this year or later on in the year. So, yeah, it's unprecedented times. It's not. It probably won't be the same again. So, it's a challenge, and it's going to be interesting to see how next year develops because everybody's I've got dates in October,
Yeah.
but everybody's saying that the year's a washout, so I don't know even if those dates are going to go on.
No, it's really quite scary, isn't it? Because I've got one date back, which is on the 8th, which is in about 9 days, and I'm terrified because we haven't rehearsed. We've only done one rehearsal in 5 months, so it's scary. And then you just think, well, how do you get ready? And it's going to be a very different climate, isn't it, musically, for sure.
Right. Well, you're brave.
I'm terrified.
Terrified, but brave, but terrified.
Yeah, I think that's what bravery is, isn't it? Doing something,
Yeah.
or is it stupidity? I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, they always say heroes are the most scared people around.
Yeah, it feels like that for sure. So, what's the sort of when you recorded your album? How did that come to be? Did you are you the sort of person that like has a sort of a normal set band? Do you get together and like rehearse or do you
Yeah.
bring in studio musicians and
No, I've never done that. I've
No.
got a set band that's been together now for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very, we have this chemistry. It's a pretty simple process. I have a home studio that we rehearse at. I write the demos first.
Yeah.
And, see which songs are going to stand up via the demo. Then we get together, we rehearse. So everything is down before we go into the studio. We go into the studio and it's still old school. I try to record live as much as possible. If I had my own way, I'd be singing in a booth
Yeah.
and playing at the same time with the guys. And I've often done that. And I'm sure some of the new album was a little that way, So I like to do everything old school. I could probably record a Savoy Brown album on an 8-track and be perfectly happy, like we did back in the 60s,
I've got a friend who is like that's how they learnt was on a Tascam 4-track and
Oh,
just
right.
I just yeah that's such a fantastic way to record because you have to be such a talented person to be able to do that firstly because it involves no cheating really or little bits of cheating and
Right.
and you have to really think about what you're going to use, don't you? When the digital studios, you can basically have an unlimited amount of tracks. When you're down to like 8 or 16 or whatever, you really have to hone in on what you're going to do, which I think focuses people sometimes.
Well, it does. I mean, I would say, in the mid 60s when I started, you'd put the lead solo on the vocal track. So you'd have to be very careful to, not. Or the engineer would have to be very careful, And so it was fun because you do that call and response thing with the vocalist, and but you'd have to get out before, you erased the vocal or something. So that was hilarious. So when the 70s came around, it was like 24 tracks, and it was amazing because all of a sudden it's like, oh. Now I can do three guitar tracks and comp them together. Now this is the most ridiculous thing for a guy like me to do, but of course we did it because the technology was so beguiling. Now I'm just a one-take person really, and most with a new album with all the guitar playing is pretty much one take. I'll do 2 or 3 passes in case the engineer, there's a mistake or something, but it rarely is. And but of course, in the 70s, when that technology came around, and I was young, 24 tracks, I do at least 3, guitar takes and comp them together.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous. You're playing blues and comping solos together.
It takes a real skill as an engineer to like kind of just drop in and drop out as like,
It's
little bits.
It's great fun doing it, but artistically, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an amazing time to have been making music because so much of like almost as you were describing, so much of like how music was crafted was affected by the technology at the time. So you had to like think, you didn't necessarily have the luxury of, like you say, 24 tracks until that suddenly came about, and that just completely changed. It's a game changer, isn't it? And it just changes how the sound, how people come together and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, technology is fantastic. It's very beguiling, but I think that you just have to take what you want of it. There's so much technology. I always liken it to going to a buffet to eat. You can go to a buffet and you can eat everything there, and have 6 plates piled up, or you can just go and say, hey, I'll have fish tonight, or something else. So that's how I am with technology. I love it. It's great, but I just want to, try to, just take enough and use what I want and leave the rest. Absolutely. Very difficult to do.
Well, if you're the sort of person, I'm akin to what you're describing. I'm definitely someone who, like, when I had the opportunity, when my finances allowed, I wanted to buy new pedals. I wanted to buy new guitars and silly stuff, and I if you could see this little space here, it's a little technology heaven. But I find that, like, actually when I focused in on a few things, found some little things that I particularly liked, I was much better, and my sound was much better. I could definitely get a bit carried away for sure with like all the music toys there are.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's fun. It brings out different aspects of you. Like guitars, really. I love the idea of playing one guitar. Yeah. Period. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got a number of guitars, they do bring out sides of your personality. There's no doubt about it. So having a bunch of guitars, if you use them, is great for you. I'm not a big believer in having 50 guitars that you never play, but if you have a collection of guitars that are meaningful, and you have your jazz box, you have your Strat, you have your Gibson, you have your Dobro, you have your acoustic. It goes on and on. There's probably a dozen guitars that can be easily relevant, and bring out sides of your personality, like guitar pedals or like any technology, but it's useful and it all works, if you don't let it get carried, if it doesn't carry you away,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that, like, their sound has been severely affected in a bad way due to that feeling, isn't it, of like wanting to get a bigger and bigger pedal board, get more and more silly.
Well, that's true. I hear a lot of the modern rock bands on the radio or something, and I just don't understand it. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on here? With the sound, and I'm not even sure I like it sometimes. But then I see them captured with an iPhone live on stage. And it's suddenly, I said, oh man, this is a great band. It's stripped of all the studio crap. I see what the band's all about.
Yeah.
But of course, that studio crap, as I refer to it as, is the appealing element to a larger section of people. But personally, I like to see the band down and dirty.
Yeah.
On stage.
Doing it, making it real.
Yeah, making it real. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, then I can understand it. Oh, I know what that chord sequence is. But it gets the chord sequences get buried under a wash, on record, sometimes.
Are you brave enough to, like, keep your, well, not brave, that's probably a poor choice of word, but do you like to try and keep your recordings like what you can do live, or do you get corrupted a bit by the dark arts and
Well, no, I've gone either way. Sometimes I get purist and say, okay, this is a 3-piece band, this is a 4-piece band, whatever, and it's got to be that way because, that purist element comes out to me. And on other albums, it's like, what the heck? Let's put a string section on, let's put horns on, and go for it. I think it's always better to be able to translate it on stage. You don't want to. I know in the past that I've gone too far, because then it's then all of a sudden you can't quite, you've added so much on the record. Say back in the 60s, I'm thinking of, you add a strings, back then you had to bring the string section in and the horn section. And then it didn't quite translate on stage. And then if you're running a band and you have musicians in the band, sometimes things start to get uncomfortable, And so I think that if you can go in the studio and then easily translate it on stage, everybody's uncomfortable. You don't have any people being unhappy or, thinking, oh, this is not quite sounding right. So obviously, ideally, what you do in the studio, if it can be easily played on stage, that's the better way. But it really shouldn't be the deciding point. If you think something, if you want to make an album that has synths and a bunch of other stuff on it that might be difficult for a rock band to incorporate, then go for it, But
yeah, that's good. It's good to not be like bound. I think there is a lot to be said for having rules and also being able to break some of those rules as well.
Right.
When we did our first album, we were very like rigid, and we said, let's make these rules. We're going to be this. We're this many people. We're not gonna cheat too much,
right.
And,
right.
And then for the second album, we just went, just why not?
Right. Yeah. It's how you feel exactly.
Yeah. It's hard to compete in the sonic space of like music production nowadays is definitely like in my mind feels very overkill and very. There's almost too much polish on stuff, and there is a way that like engineers and people can auto tune, quantize, and time stretch, and all everything. You can almost polish it to within an inch of its life, and I sometimes think that kind of takes so much away from what I like about the music, which is sometimes I like to just hear a performance. I like to know that someone's just played. Like there's something really tangible about hearing somebody just go for 5 minutes, get a perfect take of something, and there's something quite rewarding to listen to, and I think you kind of lose that nowadays with a lot of sort of more polished and popular music for sure.
Well, you said in one word where I was trying to say early on about when I listen to stuff, and then I see the YouTube, I see them live.
Yeah.
It's that the polish to me sometimes, for my ears anyway, it detracts from performance.
That's such a true statement. I wonder if that's like I wonder if that's just a tale of our age.
It probably is, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I'm a big 60s fan.
Yeah, exactly. It's good because people might listen to this. They might hear something. They might hear someone like ourselves, talking about polish via performance. And you always go back to 101 in everything, right? Whether you're in sports, whether you're in music, I'm still playing the C chord on the guitar sometimes, just to remind myself of that. And so I think it's just 101. There's polish versus performance. I mean, how many times in the past were demos, like Louie Louie or something was a demo, right? It was like one of the biggest rock hits of all time. So it's always good to be reminded that, don't get too polished. That's something. So yeah. So I'm not sure that we're really old. I think we're just talking about a 101 in music.
Absolutely. There's a lot of my sort of foundational music heroes were formed. I was really into things like I've talked about this before, but like John Martin and Nick Drake and all of these kind of like 60s sort of folk guitarists and stuff that very very sort of picky and precise, and I really got into that for a long time, and that was for me just like it's just someone and a microphone, isn't it? It's just a guitar and a microphone, and they're just at best maybe a mic on the guitar and a mic for the voice. Maybe not always even that complicated, So.
I know there is something about that. It's beautiful, it's like the old blues recordings from the 1930s, right? They were in a corner with a microphone, and they're astonishing. So yeah, it's all performance then.
Yeah.
It's getting that performance across. And
I wonder
of
if you
course
lose.
nowadays you go to the studio with a guitar and vocals, and they got 20 microphones around you.
Yeah. Well, because like the idea of like 7.1 sound and stuff, I mean that's amazing. I still have never even experienced like 5.1. Very, very very like quenched musically for that. Yeah. So your new album, what is your new album like in terms of your previous catalogue? Is it in keeping with your sort of, is it sort of in keeping with that?
I think so. We haven't had a chance to play these songs live yet, but with the previous two albums, this is still in the same. It's in the same area, really, of the last few albums I've made. And whenever I've done the new material, which I do when we tour quite a bit, people have always said, "Hey, it seamlessly fits in with the old Savoy Brown stuff." So that's why they really like it. So I would imagine that that's the case with this album. That the material has been fitting in from what I've been told. So yeah, it's I'm just trying to make Savoy Brown music really, and I'm trying to make it a little bit in a contemporary way. Obviously I listen to all the new guys. Anybody new that I follow the Billboard Blues chart, so I see who's happening there. I listen to the new people just to see what blues is considered to be today, because the sound and approach changes. Every couple of years, and I see a kind of a change going on right now, and so I listen to the new guys to follow trends, and then but more than anything, I listen to the old musicians that I grew up with, and a lot of them are still playing. Buddy Guy, Dion's got a new album out. These are people that when I was 13 years old, I was listening to their music. So So I always listen to music, from the 60s that I grew up with, the 50s that I grew up with, and that kind of anchors me. And but then I keep an ear out for what's happening with blues in a new way,
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean I'll ever jump on a bandwagon. But you have to understand what's happening around you, so that you can stay relevant. So that's what I'm trying to do: make Savoy Brown music that's still relevant today as it was, back in the old days.
That's amazing, isn't it? How does it feel to keep a band alive for such a long time? It's such how long has it been going now?
Well, I started in the winter of '65. I started rehearsing the band.
Yeah.
We made the first singles in '66. I was 17. We made the first album in '67. Was I 18 or 19? No, I was 19. I was 17 when I started the band, 18 when we did the singles. '67, I was 19 when we did the album. But once we did the singles, the harmonica player, John O'Leary, that was instrumental with me in putting everything together, quit the band. So by the time the first album came around, I had to find a replacement for John. So that changed things enormously for me. I look back and I wish John had never left, because I often wonder what kind of guitar player I'd have been, what kind of person I would have been, because immediately having to find a replacement, now I was a band leader, instead of just having a band. So from that very first moment, so we're talking maybe, what's that, 55 years ago or more, things changed for me. And then often it was just keeping a band together. Sometimes you were hanging by the skin of your teeth, because people would leave, or someone would get sacked, or I'd have a fight with somebody, and you know what bands are like.
Yeah.
And and then I'd have a tour the next day. It's like, what the heck am I going to do? One time a guy just didn't show up. I was rehearsing for a Canadian tour. He just wasn't there. He had been grabbed by another artist whose name I won't mention. He's very talented. So now I'm stuck. So I was leaving like that afternoon for this tour. So I roped in a guitar player who had I said, this guy is really good, someone told me. And we caught up with him, and he was drunk. that particular time, and I said, "Look, I need somebody to play bass."
Sober up.
Well, no, he said, "Sure, I'll play." You know, he we he so he goes to, he gets in the bus, we drive away. He wakes up 3 or 4 hours later. Where am I? He says, I said, no, you're playing bass with Savoy Brown. And he did and hilarious, because the review after we did the first show was, something like, new bassist shines, and he was a guitar player that just had, and when he woke up on the bus, it was like, what am I doing here? I said, well, you said you'd come and play bass. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But sometimes it was as crazy as that, keeping a band together.
It's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard. I think as a band, we've been together for 10 years, and I don't know how bands manage it. It's just crazy, isn't it? It's so difficult to keep any group of people focused on one thing and have everybody be in the same space. It's really difficult. So when you've changed members, how has that felt? Because you lose a little piece of the puzzle, don't you? Or are you the puzzle and everybody else sort of fits around?
No. No, it's never been like that. I bring people in and I give them the stage. I give them the spotlight. It's never, it's me. Yeah. It's Savoy Brown has been made by a collection of people. I think my guitar playing has been, when it's good, has been glues it together and is the focus.
Yeah.
But I had something I was going to say about your question there. One thing I learned quickly, when John Leary was a harmonica player, first left, that I was talking about earlier, I tried to replace him with a harmonica player, and it didn't sound the same. So I've learned what works for me is not to replace somebody with the exact same thing. Once once you have to make a change for me, I always take a different route altogether. In that case, earlier on, I brought in a guitar player. So I think it's always wise to let serendipity take over. Okay, now you've been thrown this new scenario, but don't just try to put the puzzle back together as it was. Create a new puzzle. So that's what I've always done, and when I've done it well, it's worked effectively.
Yeah. Does that help keep it fresh for you?
It keeps it fresh for me. It keeps it fresh for the audience, and that's why Savoy Brown has survived, because when the changes came, I used those changes as a way to grow the music. So people were always excited to get the new album, because what's this one going to be? Because every album there'd be something new.
That's so great. I mean, it's such. I think it's Bruce Lee who says, "Be like water."
Oh wow.
Water is. I find that quote, because I'm going to butcher it and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to. But if you search that quote, it's really interesting, and the way he describes it, that's how that's sort of exactly what you're describing. You're you just kind of go and you flow into the next thing, and that's how it's got to be a little bit, isn't it? It's very hard to. Music is one of those things that you can almost see when people are disingenuously doing it. Does that make sense? You can almost it's like when you watch an actor and you know that they're not a good actor, because they don't. The reason they're not a good actor is because they don't believe what they're saying, and so that's as a musician, you as an audience member watching music, I think you can see that disingenuous performance if people aren't into it, if the musicians themselves aren't into it, they don't believe what they're doing, and that's really a really powerful thing to sort of acknowledge, isn't it? It's very hard to have that feeling of being really really invested in what you do and believe in it a lot.
Well, I hope that's the case. I hope that people do understand the difference between somebody that's invested in it and somebody that's just playing at it or something. You hope that that will still be a standard that people understand,
Yeah.
So, and then then you start bringing in things like taste. Everybody's taste is so different, and and you have to keep an open mind about music. It's a very difficult subject really to talk about, But like what you're saying is, looking at somebody critically, looking at a performance critically, it's kind of difficult to do sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a bit of a silly question. This is for me. I find that I am terrible at finishing a project. So I like starting projects. I love starting projects. Starting projects is my favourite thing ever. Start projects all day, but actually stopping and knowing when to stop, I find really hard. Does that? Are you the sort of person that afflicts, or are you good at putting down? Like, for example, if you're making an album, do you know when to stop recording and stop putting tracks on and stuff?
Yeah, there've been times I couldn't even start the recording. There are times I've spent all day just on the drum track. I remember we did one album, and the engineer had to call my manager up and said, intervention. I spent 5 hours on the snare drum. I mean, I was out of my mind. So sometimes, certainly that's happened in the past. But now, now it's just let's just go in and knock it out. But my problem is my problem is getting to a point and think, oh, that's good, and then not continuing on. No, just getting to a point where I'm happy. Yeah. Okay, great, and not pushing myself further on. So we've all got those things that we contend with, and I tend to. That goes with the first take attitude. Oh, first take, that's good enough.
Done. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and. Sometimes I go against my own thing here, but sometimes, of course, someone needs to push you and say, "Hey, you can do better." But luckily, with the guitar, people will give me my space with that. But which is nice, if I'm working with a producer or something. Usually the guitar is. They know that that's going to be in the okay kind of thing. But in other things that you do, you need direction for sure.
Yeah. Do you have someone that you trust that you're able to gift that responsibility to?
Well, yeah. On the recent albums, Ben Elliott has been the engineer, studio owner, and he really gets involved in the production. We've been friends since the 90s, did a lot of projects together. So, for instance, on the last album, he'll have all the lyrics out and he'll go through them word by word, and follows along. And so, if I've got somebody I can go and say, should I sing that line or should I say that word? I've got instant feedback. He's helping me in the production, really, for taking no credit either. So I think that he has really been. I'm the producer, but Ben really needs credit as well along those lines. He passed away, unfortunately, after we made the album. He was ill when we did the album. So now I'm writing now for next year. Even as this album's about to come out, I'm trying to look ahead to the next album. And now what am I going to do? I think I'm probably going to have, realizing the contribution that Ben as an engineer did on the production side to help me, I'm realizing I'll probably need an outside producer for the next album.
That's such a sad situation, isn't it?
It's a very sad. I've dedicated the album to Ben. Now when I listen to the tracks, which I occasionally do, I can't help but think that because he put his heart and soul into it, and I can't help but think it was a gift that he's given me. The album's good. Yeah. And the sound is good, and I can't help when I listen to it but think, wow, this is a gift from Ben, and because he did so much work on that. I think that perhaps inside, he had a feeling that time was short. Yeah. He was optimistic. Don't get me wrong, and we're all optimistic, but you have that, mortality thing certainly is. In the back of your mind whenever you're ill. And so he put a lot into it. And it's very sad. So even as the album's coming out and I'm enjoying the feedback I'm getting from it, I'm acutely aware that Ben will not be around. Now what do I do?
Yeah, that's really sad. This is really silly, but I was getting like goosebumps while you were saying that. It's really... That relationship is so important, and it's so like I have someone that I just trust what you say, and I just go because in my own I'm like I have that thing where I just won't believe something's good enough. So I mean I like that sort of like internal monologue of like this isn't good enough, and sometimes I just need to just go, okay, I can't make the decision, so here you tell me if this is done. Do you know what I mean? And that's it.
correct. Yeah, on this new album, I went in, I knew exactly what my guitar sound was going to be.
Yeah.
But there have been times working with Ben where I've walked in, I've got no idea. You get my guitar sound. He's got my guitar sound. Yeah. Okay, well, he's got like 1 million amps, let's use this and let's use this. And, so I'm not afraid to do that either, so, and it's nice to have somebody that knows you, knows the music. And you can trust like that, whether it's songs, lyrics, guitar sound, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's a positive. Maybe the future is that you'll be forced to have to reforge that relationship or take it on yourself, and maybe that could be a real positive thing as well. So.
Well, I think that my last 3 albums have been with Ben, and earlier albums we had done together as well, and projects at all. But the last 3 in particular have done well for me, and Ben's been there. Yeah. So now what we were talking about changing personnel with Ben gone now, my thoughts are I might have to go take Savoy Brown music into a different direction. Rather than making. Keeping it as a trilogy, these last 3 albums, rather than saying, okay, I'm just going to do the same again, because now Ben's not there, and he's very instrumental in the last 3 albums. So now I'm thinking, as with the personnel change, maybe I've got to take Savoy Brown music just somewhere different, so that it will accommodate new personnel when we're in the studio.
Yeah, that's such a
rather than having. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Rather than having somebody try to be Ben Elliott,
you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely.
Get this sound for me,
Yeah, I was just going to say that's so brave to be able to take, and I think that might be like how you do it. Is just having that braveness to say like, okay, this is what our fans expect, and I'm gonna kind of like I'm gonna just go. I know better, and I'm gonna lead the ship a little bit, and that's really a brave position to be in, isn't it? It's very hard.
Well, it is, and it's been a facet of my personality that I've been able to do. I've never been afraid to make a fool of myself, and I think that in this business, you better be, have that attitude, because many times you're going to fall over the guitar cord on stage or something. And but so no, I've never been afraid to do that. I have got more conservative as I've got older. When I was a kid, I had no fear. It was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. So I'm not like I was, back then. But I'm still, I have the ability to be, hey, let's, You're unafraid to make a fool of yourself. And I think that's the kind of attitude you have to be if you get on stage. A lot of people won't get on stage, they won't perform because they don't want to make a fool of themselves. Yeah. But I think you've got to say, hey, we're all going to make a fool of ourselves at some point. So my advice to amateurs is just get up there and,
be brave.
And go. Be brave.
Yeah. Is there any other advice that you would offer to somebody that's starting out? Because it's very rare that we get to talk to somebody that's got such a wide and eclectic knowledge and has seen a variety of changes in the music industry. Is there anything that you would be able to any words of wisdom that you think you could decant to the to those coming up?
Yeah, I could go on forever. Probably, but the first thing, if for a young guy who's a girl or a person who's going to be learning music and wants to be a musician, is to focus on one style. I see so many people that say they want to play guitar. Mm-hmm. Well, if you say, I want to play guitar, well, there's jazz guitar, there's classical guitar, there's heavy metal guitar, there's blues guitar. I mean, you could name a dozen styles right off the top of your head. So it's very important that you make a choice of what you want to play. I'm going to play blues. Well, even blues has got its sub headings, you know what I mean? Texas blues, Chicago blues, folk blues. What are you going to play even within blues? So I think it's very important that you be, have blinkers on and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to play. this is the focus I'm going to take. And it's amazing how fast you can get ahead. That's no guarantee you're going to be successful, but you are going to make super progress by not saying, well, one day I'm going to play a Beatles song, and next day I'm going to, oh, Buddy Guy's great, or oh, I'll play like Eric Clapton today, or I'll play like somebody else tomorrow. It becomes too much for somebody. So I suppose for amateurs, for all of us really, even for myself, I should listen to it. Stay focused on what you want to play, what you want to say, and almost be pig-headed about it in a way. You've got to be that convinced about what you're doing, I think. But certainly, pick a focus, pick a style, stick with it, love that. You've got to make sure you love that style. This is not a paper exercise. Because of course, every time you turn the TV on, every time you do anything, you're bombarded with music, especially nowadays. And so I think it's very important that for anybody starting to have a fixed style of music you want to play,
Yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice. I find, like, one of the things that I've found works is like almost like parrots exactly what you're saying is find a niche and try and fill that niche a little bit. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, that kind of goes along with it in that you're hoping that what you fixate on and become passionate about and the style you want, you're hoping. You don't want it to be a bandwagon. You know what I mean? 5,000 people are doing it over there. Well, great. Yeah, I will do that. Well, of course, you're going to get nowhere. Yeah. Ideally, like you say, your niche should be on this side. Yeah. Let the 5,000 be over here, but you found your niche here. Doesn't guarantee you anything, but certainly you'll make progress,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a very hard, I don't know, it's a difficult thing to say, but I feel like at the moment music is really in a strange place because we've got more access to music than we've ever had. I can go and search more music and watch more music than I've ever. I can remember having a collection of 5 or 6 tapes. Do you know what I mean? I can remember coming back from having we had like the best of the Beach Boys, and we had like, I don't know, a load of just tapes in my house, and that was all the music I ever had. And then suddenly, like, as a 38-year-old nearly, I've got access to more albums than I could ever dream or ever have time to listen to. And so that's a really amazing thing for bands to be able to be discovered in that way. And like, but then also there's a sea of music and it's hard to be noticed. So it feels like it's a very difficult time for music. If you're unlucky enough to not be the thing that people want, it's very hard to kind of be that thing, isn't it? Or be noticed, for sure.
Well, that's true, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it from my standpoint, being a professional, it's fantastic time because every bit of music is available to me, on streaming services, and so I've never known this before in my life, No. So you could really go on one of the streaming services. Search for Savoy Brown however you want, and the whole catalog comes up, and so I've enjoyed that because there have been artists that I've liked, and I know what the ups and downs are in life with success in the business, and I've enjoyed listening to other artists whose music I like from the very first album onwards, via a streaming service, and I can see, where the band starts to go, starts to split up a bit, and where somebody has said to them, "Oh, go this way," and it's sort of fun to. So I've done that a number of times. I enjoy doing that. Going through a band's or an artist's catalog, because it's so easy to do. You don't have to go to a record store and buy, 12, 15 albums. You can. So in that regard, it's a fantastic time to be at. I see young 20-year-olds, that are breaking through all the time on the blues rock scene, on my scene. So, there is still you could still do that. You don't have to get buried. Uh, but yeah, the it is. Goes back to the niche thing, blues rock. Even for the young 20-year-old is doing well. You're in a very tiny part of the music business.
Yeah.
Same when I started, I was in a very tiny part of the music business. We were a blues band in the 60s in the UK. And when we went to the States, what shocked me was everybody was called a rock band. Suddenly we were a rock band, and it was like a bit weird to get, because especially growing up in England in the 60s, everybody had their, peg hole, this is what you are, this is what you are. And so then we were a rock band. Losing my train of thought a little bit here, but one thing I'm very proud of was taking that blues band into the Billboard charts.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of very difficult thing to do. Wasn't necessarily myself. It was the people I had around with me at the time. Great band, and but that's what. But it was extremely difficult then, because when we came to the States. It was still AM radio, and to actually there was no FM radio. So,
no. All
so
very local. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it was very difficult to get radio play. And so there is always, there's always the mainstream that you're fighting against, mostly, unless you are part of the mainstream from the get-go, which is very nice. But assuming that most of us are on the outside looking in, that's just the way it's going to be. And it was a fight when I started, and I'm sure it's just a bigger fight now for guys starting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's just a changing of the gatekeeper, isn't it? A little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
What was it like transitioning from a British band to an American band? And what was the reason for going over there?
Well, we were with an agency. It was that had 10 Years After, and Jethro Tull and Savoy Brown was an agency put together by Chris Wright, Terry Ellis, and my brother Harry Simmonds. And Cream had gone over. Of course, you had the Beatles that opened up the whole of America. Then you had Cream go over. Suddenly, music was getting heavier. So we had American people interested in, who's the new bands,
Yeah.
So 10 Years After went over, Jethro Tull, then Savoy Brown, we went over. We got successful, I think, because we had a very American sound, In fact, lots of record labels, thought we were American, thought we were Black Americans.
Yeah.
And so we had that American sound, and so I think it was a really nice fit, because we were playing blues authentically to people that could identify with us. I was, someone like myself playing the flying V guitar, young kid, 1920, about 100 pounds. It was like, wow, it was something new, and then those people discovered, a lot of those fans told me since, friends of mine know, they discovered Muddy Waters and that after the fact. So going to the States was fantastic, because that's where the music came from that I was playing, and we had that sound. It fitted in. I think people in the States, of course, knew what the blues was, and now we were bringing it and interpreting in a very fresh way, and that's always appealing.
Yeah.
Like to us all, right? In the blues rock world, if you're always looking for the 20-year-old that's coming along and reinterpreting it, which what we were doing. So it was great, and of course, it is such a huge, it's a continent, So it was, you never had any real inkling that you were becoming really, really successful, because you were playing venues in your own little bubble, really, And maybe you'd sell 25 records in Milwaukee and 25 records in El Paso. You had no idea, what's going on. You were just playing, and suddenly it grows, and suddenly you go from the opening act to the third in the bill, to second in the bill, then guest artist, and then you're topping the bill, and it happened within a year. It was like remarkable,
So amazing to make a dent in the American market, isn't it? I mean, you could just in England, it's kind of you can almost imagine touring England, can't you? But the vastness of America is just you could do it all. You could do it all the time, every day, and never get to anyone, couldn't you?
Yeah. Well, I would say those early tours. I mean, you had to be ready because we'd be on a plane at 8:30 every morning.
Yeah.
And sometimes we would take 3 flights to get to the gig. The amount of flying we did was ridiculous. And then you'd play, and of course you're young, you're 20, 21. You'd play and you'd go and jam all night till 4. You'd get up, get that 8:30 plane, and do it all again. So it was crazy. The traveling and the work was crazy, but that's the way we conquered it. We had the records to back it up, but we would do 2 or 3 month tours and just be hammering away at it because that's what we wanted to do. That's I mean, you have the energy to do it. It was fun because also back then you'd be on bills. One bill was Sly and the Family Stone, Dr. John, Savoy Brown, and 3 other acts or something, and one date was, I mean, I could go on. One date we did with the Chi-Lites, Ike and Tina Turner, James Cotton Blues Band. It was like, the bills were fantastic.
Yeah.
It wasn't, again, all of a sudden at that time, towards the late 60s, music became, wide open. You weren't put in those brackets. Your folks stay over there, your this stay over there. All of a sudden it all meshed together. So we would do shows with Cheech and Chong, and we did shows with comedians and all sorts of different acts. So yeah, you're working hard, but it was such fun because you'd see you were part of the scene, and it wasn't like you were doing one tour. It was before you had those long tours where an act they would just go out with an opening act. Everybody was just out there in a mix. You know what I mean? And you find yourself night after night in all sorts of different scenarios. It was great.
It must be really amazing to have had those moments where you just get to see all these sort of celebrity people that you know, and you kind of just. It's incredible, isn't it? It must just be a wild.
It's mind blowing. We did it. I have to leave shortly. I hate to say that.
No, that's okay.
I did a show with Little Richard, and afterward, it was fantastic, of course. And it was just 69, and I went out with his couple of guys in the band. We went out with him and his. What they call retinue, a bunch of people around him. We went to see B.B. King at a blues club in, I think we were in Georgia somewhere. So it was mind blowing. You're 20 years old and you're sitting next to, B.B. You're sitting next to Little Richard and you're watching B.B. King in the playing blues before he was really, a national name. So it was. Talking about being amazed. Oh, this is fun talking to you because I'm writing a book and all this kind of stuff. It brings back these memories, that if there's nothing, so I hope I remember some of it.
Yeah. Yeah, write it all down. Yeah, that's it. Well, we can, this will be, you can watch this back in case you forget.
Yeah, right, I'll watch it. Yeah, that's a good piece. I must remember that. But the Little Richard story is in the book.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, look, I'll let you go, but thank you so much, Kim. That's been really lovely chatting with you. To be honest, I think we could have just chatted all evening.
Yeah, love talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. So, your new album Ain't Done Yet's coming out. Whenabouts is that coming out?
August the 28th.
August the 28th. So go and check it out. It's going to be fantastic. And thank you so much. This has been MNPR. Feel free to check us out. You can find us at MNPR Magazine. And this has been Kim Simmonds from Savoy Brown. Thank you so much. We will chat again, hopefully.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care. Cheerio. Bye-bye.